Hello BSCFT. Today's lecture topic is on processing of figs. What are figs? Figs are minor fruit crops in context to the commercial production of fruits. In English it is called figs, and in Hindi it is known as anjeer. There is the German name, then there is French name, then there is Spanish name, and scientific or botanical name, that is Ficus carica. Now the product description, how the fig are. What are the figs? Now figs are the pear-shaped false fruit of the fig tree. Now why they are called as false fruit? In simple terms, figs are technically not a fruit. They are inverted flowers. Figs doesn't flower. That means fig trees don't have flowers like apples and peaches. Their flowers bloom inside the pear-shaped pod, a pod inside which a flower blooms, which later matures into the fruit we eat. So that's why it is called a false fruit. Now it is from the mulberry family, or botanically it is known as Moraceae. They contain large number of tiny stone fruits inside them. So the tiny stone fruits inside the fig fruit gives it a gritty taste, texture. They are preserved by drying. Dried figs are sold commercially all over the world. The fig tree, which is often more bush-like, it is native to the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea. It is now widespread throughout the tropics and subtropics. Now in India, figs are also grown. In India, figs are mostly confined to western part of Maharashtra, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh. In Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow and Saharanpur, Karnataka, in Karnataka, Bellary, Chitradurga and Srirangapatna, and in Tamil Nadu, Coimbatore city. So in India, fig is produced or cultivated in these regions. The drying process flattens the pear-shaped figs, resulting in the loss of their pear-like shape and the adoption of round shape. Depending on quality, a distinction is drawn between natural figs and processed figs. Processed figs are generally dried figs. Natural figs are dried in the sun or by machine, threaded on cords into rings. As we have seen in the market, the dried figs are sold like that. They are threaded or corded into rings and they are sold like that. The glucose, which crystallizes out and create a dull surface with its granules, preserve the figs naturally as dried fruit. So crystallization protect the surface, and surface protection is a necessary thing to protect it from outside environment as well as the microbes. Processed figs undergo several operations like drying, immersion in salt water or steam treatment, pressing and drying again. Pressing in particular shapes like slabs or rolls and processing give the figs an attractive shiny appearance. Figs processed in this way are commercially the most desirable. Now, the quality or duration of storage. Figs should be large, thin-skinned and light brown and taste sweet, juicy and honey-like. The most sought after are Smyrna type figs, which are well suited to the drying process. The whitish coating on the skin is glucose, which has crystallized out, provided that the recommended storage temperature and relative humidity is complied with, candying of the fruits may be avoided. So the optimum storage temperature and relative humidity should be complied of, because if we do not follow the high temperature and low relative humidity or higher relative humidity than needed, can produce candying effect in the figs, and that candying effect may develop sour odor, and it may also display the severely dried out texture. So it is a defect. So as we all know that for all fruits and vegetables, this is the key, the optimum storage conditions for each and specific types of fruit. Other than that, they may show defects. Dried figs have only a limited shelf life, although the fresh figs also have the limited shelf life. Like fresh figs last for 2 to 5 days, refrigerated figs last for 5 to 7 days, and freezed figs last for 6 to 8 months. So comparatively, the figs have lower shelf life or limited shelf life, that makes them highly perishable fruit with less cultivated variety of fruit. So recommended storage temperature, relative humidity should be complied of, otherwise microbial load can supports yeast growth, mold growth, fermented and unpleasant odor, as we have discussed. Now the intended use of the figs. Figs generally are consumed dry, but these can be eaten raw. These can be converted into preserved products like jams, wine and bread. Fig pulp is also a product. Now we can see the fresh figs. These are the leaves of fig tree. These are the flowers. As we can see, the flower pods, actually these are not actual flowers, these are pod which have flower inside them, and these flower inside develop into fig. This is the fresh fig. Picture on cutting, we can see the red color inside the fig, and if we see it closely, we can see the gritty texture of the flesh, as we have discussed that it has numerous stone fruits inside the fig. And this is the dried fig, that is the natural variety of figure 5, and this is the commercial variety which is processed to have more attractive color and glaze. Means attractive means the lighter the color, the more attractive, and it is sold in a corded in a ring or thread. So, and it is in Hindi, it is known as anjeer. Now the origin. As we can see, the important countries of origin where it is cultivated: in Europe, Greece, Italy, Spain, Turkey, Portugal, south of France cultivate figs. Then in Africa, Algeria produces fig. Then in Asia, Syria. In Asia, India also cultivates some amount of fig. Then America, California is the base to cultivate figs. In Australia, all over Australia, various number of places the figs are cultivated. Turkey is the main producer of the figs in the world. It produces 30% of the total production of the figs in the world. Now, fresh figs versus dried figs. If we compare quality on certain parameters, like first is calories, that dried figs are having little lower in calories than the fresh figs. Dried figs have 20 calories while fresh one has 30 calories. So this is the calorie part, and now the main constituents, chemical and nutritional constituents: carbs, fiber and sugar content. When comparing the dried and fresh figs on the basis of carbs, fiber and sugar content, the difference in carb and sugar are slight. Dried fig is slightly lower in carbs and sugar, both 5 grams of carb in dried figs and 4 grams of sugar. But for fresh fig have 8 grams of carbs and 7 grams of sugar. But then glycemic index of the dried figs are high, because dried figs are processed and the form of carb is simpler. When form of carb is more complex, then glycemic index of anything is lower. If carb form is simpler, then glycemic index will be higher. That's why processed and dried figs have higher glycemic index. Then glycemic index for dried figs is 62. Then for fresh fig it is less than 55. Then for vitamins and minerals, figs aren't a significant source of any vitamin or mineral. So, and the difference between dried and fresh fig in context to the vitamins and minerals is insignificant, but potassium, magnesium and manganese can be drawn. Now the packaging, you can see the packaging, hardwood boxes, millboard boxes can be used, and there are specification and standards of that. Then two types of transportation can take place in general: cargo at normal temperature and temperature control. Temperature controlled cargo is very necessary for fresh fig, not for dried fig. Then means of transport, standard containers or refrigerated can be used. Then cargo handling is important, so appropriate care must be taken during cargo handling. If moisture protection is not proper, mold, rot, growth, fermentation, tackiness can be there. So avoid damp weather, avoid moisture. Then stowage factor. What is stowage factor? Stowage factor indicates how many cubic meters of space 1 metric ton of a particular type of cargo occupies in a hold of cargo ship. So, for 1 ton, how much space should figs container get? That is the stowage factor, and this factor is there 1.8 cubic meter per ton. Then cool, dry, good ventilation, that is all required. Then segregation, cargo securing is there. Then temperature, which is the most important part of extending shelf life of any fruit or vegetable produce. That is, favorable travel temperature is 4 to 20 degrees centigrade for normal and dried fig, but for fresh fig 4 to 7 degrees centigrade should be maintained. Then humidity, relative humidity should be 60 to 70%. What is relative humidity? Relative humidity, the moisture content of the air outside the fig container. So relative humidity is also important. Then for dried fig, it can be 80 to 30%, because dried figs have lower moisture. Then ventilation, it is also very necessary to ventilate, to evacuate moisture and carbon dioxide. So the dried figs display third order biotic activity. They belong to the class of goods in which respiration processes are suspended because they are dried, but in which biochemical, microbial and other decomposition processes still proceed. So that's why the temperature, humidity and all environment should be strictly made. Other than figs, dried nuts and other dried products have lesser amount of specifications and standards to be followed, because when respiration process is suspended in dried things, the biochemical, microbiological and other type of decomposition is also restricted or inactivated. But in figs, it is after drying, it is on. And then gases, there is no risk. Then self-heating and syrup formation may be there at upper, from when temperature is upper side, that is 25 or more. Then odor, passive behavior. Active behavior is they have pleasant odor, slight and pleasant odor, dried figs. But passive behavior, the dried figs are highly odor sensitive and should not be stored in the vicinity of onions and other eliaceous vegetables which are having the high concentration of odor and specific type of pungent odor. So pungent smelling fruits and vegetable does not need to be stored with the figs. If then figs can adhere the odor, so because it is highly odor sensitive. Then contamination, these are extremely sensitive to contamination, as we have discussed that their biological activities are on, so chances of contaminations are there. So they need very much care and proper mechanical security should be there as for any other fruits and vegetables, so they do not rupture mechanically. Then mold attack may cause figs to form mycotoxins. So we are seeing continuously that packaging requirements and standards are very strict, because figs are very much sensitive fruits even if dried. So these are the insect infestation or disease. So these are the standards for infestation, standard infestation to lower the risk of insect and pest. So I think it is clear and complete the processing of figs. You can prepare handwritten notes based on this lecture.